Hi everyone, Nemo here. On Halloween weekend 2021, M. Russell Ballard, Jeffrey R. Holland, Quinton L. Cook, Mary G. Cook, Patricia T. Holland, and other area authorities held two special conference meetings in front of a live audience at Hyde Park Chapel and broadcast them via YouTube. It was an event of interest to many, both inside and outside of the church. It was a newsworthy event. The apostles themselves called it historic, to have three of them on the British Isles. Some, including myself, wondered if this was a British rescue. Other British commentators and I gave our predictions right here on this channel, and spent our time immediately afterwards analysing the broadcasts with John Delin and Samantha Shelley. I uploaded a recording of the original meetings to my YouTube channel, without my commentary, just to be viewed by anyone who wanted to, members and non-members, those who missed the broadcast and those who wanted to rewatch it. Now, I expected the church may file a copyright claim. I was prepared for that. I didn't even monetize the video for that reason. What I didn't expect was that they wouldn't just go through the normal YouTube process, but that they would go to the trouble of having one of their lawyers contact me personally within 24 hours to instruct me to take the video down so that no further formal action would be necessary. And I obliged them. Because with all that said, what I'm not here is a victim of any kind. What I am is fired up. Because while the church's system of common consent drags its feet and fails the members of the church, while the glass ceiling continues to exist at the stake president level when people need and want to effect change within the church, while that's all going on, its system for going after members over something as petty as reposting a broadcast of their own apostles works at lightning speed. And so I've got some friends together, and we're going to talk about this. Let's get everyone in the chat. Hi everyone, unmute yourselves please and introduce yourselves. We'll start with Peter, we'll go around the screen, Alana, PD, Laura, Julie and Jane. Off we go.
Hi, I'm Peter Bleakley. I host the Mormon Civil War podcast channel and YouTube channel, and we together are the Brit Vengers. Over to Alana.
Hi everyone, my name's Alana and I am part of 21st Century Saints with Jane. And part of the Brit Vengers and love it.
Thanks. PD?
Priest of Dispatches here. Hey everyone. They just call me PD. So that's just what it is.
Laura and Julian?
Yeah, we're Laura and Julian Heath.
I'm Laura.
Yeah. Laura, Julian. And we are from Elder Holland's favourite British ward, Solihull.
There you go. And Jane?
And I'm Jane. I co-host the 21st Century Saints podcast and live stream along with Alana, and I am the active Mormon in the pair. So yeah, I had been really excited to see this week's broadcast.
Nice. Thank you everyone for coming along. Thank you all for being here to discuss this. Just before we get into it, I really want to read one of the responses that I got, because I posted this on Reddit. I posted it on my Facebook page, I posted it on my Instagram, I put this everywhere, because the Streisand effect is in full effect now. The church tried to hide something and everyone's talking about it. And someone said here something that's brilliant. They said, "This reminds me of a scripture in the Bible. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house." I wonder if there needs to be a new revelation given to include a more correct translation, much like the JST. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Unless such light is deemed harmful to mine holy corporation, then verily, verily, I say unto thee, let mine lawyers come forth and proclaim unto the heathen, take my video down. I think that pretty much sums it up. Nothing in what I posted hurts the church, and yet they still felt the need to take it down. Go.
Wait. I don't know if that's exactly true in what you said there. You said nothing in what you posted hurts the church. It was pretty dire when it came to the fact that you take away the auto cue and the correlation committee, and it's just a gibbering mess.
And that's what this was, wasn't it?
Yeah, they pretty much hurt themselves.
It'd be interesting to get the video, take out all of the references to their age, all of their references to their times in the British Isles, all the references to how privileged they are to be with Alder Ballard, and I
don't think YouTube lets you post videos under 30 seconds. I think they have a rule, so I don't think that'd work, Julian.
Yeah.
So you gonna say to it, Laura?
Yeah, I was gonna say at a time, local leadership is a bit of a roulette on how you're gonna receive pastoral care. Some congregations do it really, really well, and they've got great bishops. Shout out to our old bishop at Solihull, was a magical person full of love. And some people hit the jackpot there and some people don't. And I think as a consequence, those that are of the liberal kind and can look past the fact that maybe their local leadership can't provide that pastoral care are wanting that from leadership, prophets and apostles, and probably think if only my local leaders could hear that from the apostles and prophets, then they would be a little bit more caring. And so it makes it even more important when they come over for them to talk about Jesus and talk about things that are going to motivate local leaders in a very loving and progressive way, you know, progressive for the congregation. And so for that to be completely missing, I wonder if over the next coming days, that will become more and more apparent to those people that did hear it and are now processing that and thinking actually it was really pretty void of anything that had substance in it. And maybe that's something as well that those that are involved in taking it down are processing as well.
Yeah. PD?
No, Laura, I came across something today and it was a new level of cognitive dissonance about this, because I spoke to some family and very TBM, like beyond TBM. They are second anointed and beyond. So you can understand their mindset. And I said, they know that I'm an ex-Mormon. I said, did you watch it at the weekend? To which their eyes lit up. He's watching church. I was like, not for a good reason. Not for the reason you think. But I said, they said to me, what was wrong with it? And I said, well, the message was so generic that if you take out, as you said, Julian, all of the British stuff, all the references to chocolate or sheep, then that message could have been given anywhere. And it was pretty weak. There was no specific UK or Ireland stuff there. And they were like, well, actually, if you really think about it and sit and ponder what they said, it was all about the UK and Ireland. And I was just like, ooh, oh my gosh. Like, they couldn't tell me what, but in their mind.
But the problem is, we can't sit and ponder it, and we can't reflect on it, because those of us that have tried to rewatch it have lawyers come after us.
Yeah, there's that.
I think this is the thing. It's this idea. We're sort of used to this idea that they don't want people to record their broadcasts. So, for example, if Dallin Oaks gets up in a regional conference or a state conference or a special fireside in Ohio or something, they will ask everyone not to record it. And kind of the idea or the justification for that is he's talking to insiders. We are a religion that has a concept of milk before meat, and that if he can speak more freely, he'll be giving you more meat. You will get deeper doctrine, you will get deeper insight, and he can not be paranoid about sort of being critiqued for what he's saying. And in a way, there's a glimmer of rationale there and justification. And people do still, of course, record these things, and usually there isn't much meat or there's occasional explosive statement. But this wasn't that. This is a broadcast to 5 nations, to England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and the Republic of Ireland. And have I got my maths right? And it was totally public. One presumes that these people aren't they're not speaking to a small group of inside mature members. It's a broadcast. The first one was to teenagers and young adults. So one presumes that the content that these apostles are going to bring to this is for a public audience, because it is. So why then would they then want nobody to ever again hear what they said?
I think I have an
down
answer.
the memory hole immediately.
Because, and I want to get Alana and Jane's response to this, and then everyone else to kind of pile in. But someone just mentioned that, in the chat, how are they going to mythologize the success of their visit and how impactful it was in the Ensign? Now, what I wonder is if by having it available afterwards, they don't get to wax lyrical about how great and successful it was and how brilliant the things they said were. They don't get to cherry pick and that sort of stuff. PD looks really excited.
I know, I'm thinking of it at school.
No, right. It's a panel. We have to.
Right. And then we'll get Alana and Jane.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, we saw the blueprint for this a few weeks ago when there was the whole Book of Mormon is not a historic textbook kerfuffle.
Mm-hmm.
It was a visit of President Nelson and his wife, and I think was it Uchtdorf and his wife? I don't know who they went with, but it was the president and an apostle, and they went to like Ohio, Midwest area, and we didn't get the broadcast, but what we did get were cherry-picked pieces from it through a church news article, and I think this is what this will turn into. They don't want to give the broadcast. It will go to the correlation committee, and they will cherry-pick and move things out of context to give the message to the world
and ignore the juicy bits.
Yeah, and I think that's what the blueprint for this will be.
What do you think, Jane and Alana? What do you think they're going to say to the members?
Just maybe suggest before you jump in, Alana, maybe we could all make sure our phones are switched off because we're getting a little bit of feedback from someone's mic. Maybe put our phones on airplane mode, guys. Sorry, Alana, when you go.
No, I was just going to say, I seen the comment coming up and I just kind of thought along those lines. I was like, oh, it'll be the most wonderful thing in the world. Like PD said, they'll pick what they want people to hear from it. Whereas, and I think as well, like the members, obviously, like from a few people that I've seen, it was wonderful, it was great, it was so good. But it's like, from our perspective, looking at it, we're like, what was so good about it? But I feel like they'll really raise it up to be this wonderful, monumental thing that it wasn't.
And what they get to do then is they get to say that they get a level of plausible deniability because whatever's written about it in church news is what was written about it in church news. It's not what was actually said because no one can prove what was actually said because there's no recording.
Yep,
Sorry,
absolutely.
Carry on, Jane. Sorry.
Well, I think it's enough for a lot of people, and I think if a lot of people have felt spiritually uplifted by what was presented to them, then who the hell are we to take that away from them? If that was good for you, then I'm thrilled. Now, my concern is that we've got people showing up who are hoping for something that they didn't get. I think it's, 3 apostles are coming to the UK. Isn't it right that we should expect that we're going to hear something that's going to help us feel closer to Christ or help us understand the direction the church is taking in the UK and Ireland? Most especially the prayer in the hearts of so many Latter-day Saints in the UK and Ireland is, you guys know what's happening here, don't you? Can you speak to that? Can you speak to the fact that everyone's leaving? And we didn't get any of that. So if there's some kind of, subtext that, PDs, friends who are saying, this was wonderful. If you really ponder it, then, you would hear that we were getting those messages. Then we literally are talking about you making up a script in your own head because, unbiasedly, nothing was talked about when it comes to the fact that the church is crashing here. And if you don't want to open your eyes and look at that, then that's on you. But when you don't have a church to worship in one Sunday, and that is going to come, then that becomes on you. If you're closing your ears and you don't want to hear it, it's on you. The other thing though that I think is, like you say, Nemo, you had anticipated you're going to be asked to take it down. We all knew that if someone's putting something up online and the people who have been part of that haven't consented for it to be online. You've got the right to ask. It's that you had pointed out that you would have had no issue with that, and I know that. My and Alana's real issue behind it is the fact that they were using a hammer to crack a nut. If they'd went through YouTube, you would have taken it down. But it's it was, I think, the serious tone of that letter, which you shared with us, the serious tone of it. But and I'm aware you don't have to comment on this, but this is sort of, Alana and I, what we are more interested in is how is someone experiencing this? It was incredibly hurtful for you. It was incredibly traumatic for you. You're our friend, and I'm speaking to Alana, like, I can't believe that Nemo's having to feel like this, because the organisation that you love and that you're trying to help, you see what you're doing is trying to help, and to have that kind of response. So it was how you had felt about that had really gutted us.
Yeah, I spoke to my mum about this. I said, Mum, how do you feel about the fact that the church has just sent lawyers after your son for something that they could have contacted my bishop. They know I'm a member. They know who I am. They could have just said to my bishop, look, he's put this up. We're not happy. Could you ask him to take it down, please? Sure. Instead, they sent a very expensive email because those lawyers aren't cheap. That law firm is not a cheap place to have people work for you. So, and it hit me a little bit, because it was sent with such gravitas and such seriousness. And then I took a step back, and that's what I've kind of been processing today, is that what I did wasn't that bad. It didn't warrant that kind of reaction. And it's that overblown reaction that makes me wonder, okay, right, why is the church acting like this over something so petty? So we've got Julian and PD, they've been raising hands.
Yeah, so just in answer to that, I think it was more to do with the expediency of the issue than anything else. That's why they handled it that way, because going through YouTube would have taken a little bit longer, and they wanted it down as soon as possible. But the real comment I wanted to make, just going back to what you said a while back, Peter, I think you were being very generous. I think the idea that this kind of ban of recording them is to do with any kind of milk or a meat thing. I think certainly I have always believed, and I remember when they first came out with that. In fact, it was just after my mission where I'd been recording all kinds of any meeting that I had with a general authority there. I would record it, and I think I've still got the mini discs somewhere. Show my age now, mini discs. But it was because we know that they can go off script. We know that when they don't have that. The teleprompter, and we know how much goes into the general conference talks, that they can go off script and they can say something that's a little bit mental or just controversial. Yeah, and so I think that it's got much more to do with that, and it just makes me think, well, that's only a problem. That's only a problem when you create this idea that they are infallible. If we were allowed to see them, in the general membership were allowed to just see them as men just trying their best, then it wouldn't be a problem. We could all be much more generous and just go, we've all said things that we probably shouldn't have said. It's not a big deal. But we don't. We put them on a pedestal, and you can see that. You could see that on the video, that kind of majestic royal procession coming through. Everybody stands up. We put them on a pedestal, and we have anybody that's had these conversations with people that are TBMs have been confronted with this idea of, oh well, they're not, they're not perfect. Well, follow that through to its logical conclusion. Then,
yes,
if we know that they're not perfect, but we treat them like they are, then it doesn't make any difference. We might as well say that they're perfect.
Exactly.
And so I think that's the real issue, is that those videos, when they are, especially when they are viewed without that kind of the elevated experience of being there and in their presence, when it's viewed without that, then it exposes the fact that they are just normal people, and
just
that,
before,
as you see beyond the curtain.
Just before we get on to PD, I just want to raise a quick question for the audience. I want them to answer this. I was doing some thinking today, and I was thinking, okay, if the church is a corporation, which it is, and they've just acted like a corporation, okay, I'm a member of that corporation. I'm a signed-up member of that corporation. I'm on their membership records, right? I'm a member. I, in theory, have voting rights because we have votes, sustaining votes and things like that. I wonder, can an institution, can a corporation set its own lawyers on one of its own members? I, through my tithing, have paid for those lawyers, just like the rest of us have. They technically work for me. The last bit was a joke, but the first bit, I wonder what's going on there. PD. Oh, go on, Julian.
No, just on that point, I think I had this conversation just a couple of weeks back with my good friend Dave Burton, and he was talking about the fact that when you look at it, actually there is only one member of the church. Technically, there is only one member of the church, and that is Russell M. Nelson. As far as the legal perspective, concerned, there is only one member of the church.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's true.
There we go. So that answers my question. Cheers, Julian. Sorry, audience, you didn't get to participate. PD, go for it.
I was just going to point out the speed at which they moved. It was like lightning. So the last broadcast was 10 till 12 on Sunday. And then you put the videos up Sunday afternoon. And then Sunday evening UK time, Sunday afternoon Utah, we all appeared on the Mormon Stories episode with John DeLynn. And then the next day, Monday, because I know my days. Sorry, Ballad.
And that's become an inside joke now because people can't watch the video.
What month is it? But the next
Come on, give the guy a break. What age is he?
He's 93.
How did you know that?
Is he 93? Oh, wow.
But
I didn't know.
The point being, if this process went from someone at church to Curtin McConkie, who then went to their retained lawyers in the UK, Curtin McConkie would have received that email sometime Monday morning in Utah, which would have been around 2:00 in the afternoon here in the UK. And in less than 2 hours following that, I guess, receipt of email, if we say they started work at 8 a.m. Monday morning in Utah, they drafted a letter to threaten you with legal action. And how quickly does anything happen in the church, whether it be someone commented to say that sexual abuse claims drag on for years, you know, we've all been trying to oppose, and the priesthood leaders drag their feet. There's no comeback from any of the leadership. But as soon as there's something threatening their perfect persona, as Julian said, it's kind of like Thor's hammer. No, they can't have Thor's hammer. They can't have that.
They can afford Thor's hammer.
It's Superman coming to squash an ant. You know what I mean? It's like, what was the point? They're just being arseholes. Sorry.
Well, I think it's because we've got a global, you know, it's such a big worldwide church. There's that tension of the fact that if a message is coming to someone in, I don't know, the Utah corridor, that it's going to maybe not be relevant in the UK or the other way around. And so when the internet first started becoming a thing, and people were taking notes during their local state conferences where, you know, a general authority would pitch up, and all of a sudden you've got these urban legends that are going around saying, right, the Lord is coming and this is, you know, supposed to be happening. We've been asked to get a food store. There's clearly something going down, and this would go viral. So there is a tension between relevance between different areas. I think that makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, the church just has never managed to kind of strike that balance with the local and the global. But the difficulty that I'm having is that, you know, if we're wanting to sort of take the TBM active believing Mormon point of view. We accept, we believe that, you know, the Jesus is coming back, and it's sooner. You know, we're hearing a lot of that even from the apostles. They're going to meet Jesus probably before, you know, anything else. You know, they're talking about, they're preparing for meeting their maker. They're in that
Or already
headspace.
have.
Jeffrey Holland was making it really clear. You know, he's like, you know, we're older, and I think that was why they kept talking about it so much. The thing is, if we're going down that road of last days prepper rhetoric, you know, there's all of these scriptures that we have. I love the light and a candlestick thing on Reddit. But you know, we've got this stuff that talks about how hidden things which no man knew, these things are all going to be declared, that there's nothing that is going to be secret. That's something that we all look forward to, except we can't have it every way. Either we're openly declaring and talking about things, and there's no need to have purged that from the internet, and you know, there wasn't any sort of particular threat there. You know, are we declaring, are we being open, are we sweeping the earth with knowledge as with a flood, or are we not? Are we closing ranks? And you know, I know that Alana's going to want to say something about this, but I mean, the thing that is most shocking to me is I don't know that I've ever heard a lawyer's letter being sent for anything other than something like this. If there's an abuse claim, the church's lawyers don't get involved. It tends to go through, you know, do not be working with children in this ward. You're being instructed. You're not allowed to go anywhere near children in this unit anymore. Or, you know, something where you can see the church is taking this very, very seriously. Nemo, you got the memo yesterday. The church is taking that very, very seriously, to the point where you had to, you know, sort of think, how am I going to approach this? When it comes to abuse claims, when it comes to protecting our children, you know, a couple of minutes worth of training video where we're just clicking through buttons, that's as much as they're giving us. My concern is that when people are specifically asking for help in specific areas, such as I have experienced abuse, or I am concerned that here is a risk factor, or even if we go down the road of I don't sustain the profit, or you know, there is some kind of tension. What do we do with that when we are asking for help? We're going through the chains and we're not getting anything back. But you do something like, you know, put up a video and it's like lightning.
Yeah, it is.
And it's holding a mirror to themselves, you know. As you mentioned, Nemo, they haven't gone after you about anything that where you're commenting, where you're making criticisms, where you're analysing what they're saying. I guess partly because they can't touch you legally for that, it's fair use. But it's just kind of this very symbolic moment that they're censoring their own leaders. It's their own content they want removed. They didn't want it to stay online anyway. As soon as that broadcast was over on the church's YouTube channel, it's removed. And it's just this whole, as we've sort of been exploring here, it's this whole double standard. When we're told, and they're increasingly doubling down on this narrative, that these people are speaking for God, that they're the only people on the whole face of the earth, of the billions of people on earth, only they are allowed by God to speak for God. And it's got so extreme that they're now quoting in General Conference again, Ezra Taft Benson's 14 Fundamentals in Following a Prophet. Ezra Taft Benson, as an apostle, just before he became prophet, gave a talk. It was published in the Liahona. It was quoted verbatim in later General Conference talks, and it's starting to come back. And it is the ideology of this control and leader worship. And it was his wish list for a tyranny, so that when he became the president, he could have carte blanche. It says the current prophet supersedes all previous prophets. The current prophet overrides the scriptures. you know, and the current prophet can say anything he wants about any topic, even if he's not qualified, and he is speaking for God in that matter. So the ego there, the incredible arrogance that a human being called to that role is going to be that infallible. And we are taught, as we mentioned before, that President Eyring said in the Power of Sustaining Faith talk, we're not allowed to speak or even think of any of our leaders as having human weakness, and only God can judge them. They are that good. So why on earth would anything these men say, particularly when they're speaking to 5 countries, 5 nations of the earth at once in a public broadcast? One presumes they're being careful about what they're saying. They understand the weight of
Jeffrey
that
Holland
situation.
said he's being careful about what he says, and he will be accountable for what he says. He said it at that broadcast.
Absolutely. Which was one of the take-home quotes from it. I mean, amazing. And he was, and that he will be held accountable for anything he said in the past. So it's this arrogance, this fighting back, never acknowledging a mistake. He's basically saying, I've never made a mistake, even when we know he was lying about stuff. So to have that narrative, and then on the other hand, the excuse that people have mentioned always, they're just human beings. They're not perfect. They're not gods. Just let it all go. We'll judge you intensively, member of the church, about every tiny thing and guilt trip you to heck. But if these people above state president level, you know, the glass ceiling you mentioned earlier, say or do anything egregiously bad, even just lie, just steal, charity fraud, whatever, which they're all doing, no, you just forgive it. A huge generous wave of grace for these doddering old men who can't cope with the responsibility and who are so far into old age, it's unfair to put them in that situation. You know, that they're not.
The thing is, these videos had the same level of impact as the original broadcast. You know, had they stayed on current trend before they got taken down, they would have been at 10,000 views right now, at least.
Well,
you know, they were at 8,000 views combined.
Was the numbers.
Yeah.
Alana was tracking for us. It was 8,269 people at sort of a peak.
That was the highest that I recorded.
And in 24 hours, by just having it stay on a bit longer on your channel, Nemo, another 7,000 or more people had watched it. And it was going to, easily carry on getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So
and
people are hungry for this. They want to hear what these people say.
Yeah. That
active
was
members
people were coming to. Yeah.
Active members. And I was handing it out to people. State presidents were wanting it. I want to read, and then I want to kind of get your final thoughts on everything, because I'm aware people have listened to us a lot over the past couple of days. I want to get your thoughts on this. This was posted in Sisters in Zion, UK and Ireland. I won't name who said it. They said, "Help, please. I was unable to see the conference on Sunday, but was given a YouTube link for the conference. I watched about 10 minutes of it yesterday before I started work, but when I started my break 5 hours later, I was invited to sign in only. I couldn't get to it. I had intended to subscribe to the channel that was showing it, but I can't remember the name. Is anybody able to point me in the right direction? Many thanks." A commenter said, "I think they've been taken down for illegal use. I've seen a post from an ex-member, factually inaccurate, threatened with legal action for not using it with permission. I assume even though it's used in a positive way, it's still unauthorized. Thanks, that makes sense." Does it make sense? A Christian organization whose word has been put out there, like they said, in a positive way. I didn't put my own spin on it, didn't put any commentary on it. Just put it out there for anyone to watch. And members think, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Because he was an ex-Mormon, makes sense, should take it down. Doesn't make sense. Final thoughts from everyone. We're going to run round. Peter, and we'll run around the order we came for introductions. So Peter, Alana, PD, Laura, and then Jane.
Yeah. So the juicy content here that perhaps are the particular thing, apart from the fact that they let people down so obviously, and it was just a holiday trip for some old men to be nostalgic, and they could not stop talking about that even when they promised to speak of the future. There were two, for me, particularly, significant moments. One was the massive lie. Elder Holland declared that when these 15 men who become the apostles take on that calling, they leave their nets and they give everything they have and everything they are to the service of the church, and they told the young people it's all for you. When we know, and it was in the news recently, that one of his apostle colleagues, Gary Stevenson, was given an exception to this, and who knows who else has, to carry on being a board member and working in the company he founded, and he's $900 million from that position. So I'm excited. He's obviously going to give all of that to the young people of the church, and I'm delighted to see what he'll spend it on. Of course they won't. So that was a lie, and it was a big lie about something that significant. Secondly, he totally let the cat out of the bag by talking at length about how his colleagues and their wives, so that's the key, and their wives, because this is a ceremony that happens with the two of them, have received the second anointing, which guarantees their exaltation, that they are saved, as he said, and they're going to become gods, as we all know it means. And
Called a permanent pass.
Publicly. A permanent pass, and that they'd earned it, as we discussed in the thing. So that is the main key points that they want to silence. So for me, the issue here, as you've said, Nemo, is who actually runs our church? Because institutionally, they have censored their own bosses. Someone out there is the real leader of our church. And it isn't the apostles, because every time they do a broadcast, they take it off the air and try to throw it down the memory hole as soon as possible. They are censoring the people they're telling us are the mouthpieces of God and infallible. So just this act of doing this, even as a routine, which they do it as a routine, there is no reason for a broadcast to 5 nations to not remain online forever, to be part of the historical record. We have ensigns going back online to 1971, but they know that every time these people get up and speak off script without severe, correlating from someone, they screw up, they disappoint people, they contradict each other and themselves, and they take a flamethrower to what people think is their religion. And my final little comment is simply, a lot of you are hearing positive comments from TBMs and so on. That's not the whole picture. A lot of my friends who are struggling to stay in the church and are deeply faithful and spiritual were as horrified as we were. They saw mumbling old men reminiscing and talking nonsense and not feeding them what they need, and their children have already left and they're hanging on by their fingernails. They had those fingernails stamped on by the negligence of the laziness of not even preparing properly to give a talk to 5 countries. And and we're paying them a fortune and bigging them up for that. That's why this is significant.
Thanks. Alana?
I don't really know if I've got much to say. I try to be positive about things as much as I can, but I just feel it was just a mess, a complete mess. And like we've all spoke about, I think it was more about protecting them than, because it was such a mess. I have to give a wee shout out. The talk that I did think was maybe a little bit okay was, let me see if I can get his name right, Alan T. Phillips, is it? Yeah. I thought his was quite reasonable, compared to the rest of them. But I just think it's sad, really, that they feel they have to come at people, just for sharing a video that's already been shown to people. It's just crazy. And I sometimes think, is that just something else to put a wee notch on your belt, for them to come at you because they're looking for something? Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about that. Is it something they're trying to? Because so far clearly they've not been able to, or they've chosen not to, or you've not given them anything that they can say. And I'm just thinking, is this something they're going to try and, say, right, it's time now, he's crossed the line. I hope not, obviously, for your sake, but it just saddens me to think that this was a church that I once loved and gave all my time and energy to. I've done so much, not to blow my trumpet, but I think we can all say that, we've all given of our time. I've put my daughter, not to the side, but, I've had her trailing around with me as I've went about and did things for parties and organisation and things like that, and it's just sad to think that they preach about love and compassion and all these things, but I just don't see it anymore. I think they've lost it. I think I said this to my mum and dad a while back. I said, I think, this is my belief, that possibly, because I'm kind of in between just now, that the church was restored, but I think we've fallen so far from it now. I think we're being led astray, even though they say that we won't, but I think we are, because I don't believe this is how Jesus Christ would want his church to be, personally.
Thank you. Jane, do you want to go? And then Laura and PD, we'll just go around the screen that way. that way.
Jane,
Jane, you're
you're
muted.
muted.
Oh, Jane, you're muted.
Muted, lad. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. Yeah, I just think it's so sad that you know, if the aim of the meeting was to bring back or strengthen people like Alana, that it's had the opposite effect. I just think that says a lot about the weekend itself. I totally appreciate if the church want to take it down, it's their ball. If you don't want people to play with your ball, it's yours. Take it home if you like. Church broadcasts tend to, for example, there's one coming up this weekend for single sisters in the UK, and it's an official church broadcast through the church page. Now, I would imagine that's probably likely to stay up, because something that's more, you know, when it's not a stake area, it's, you know, it's a little bit more problematic. People worldwide would not have been able to see this a few years ago. This would have been, you know, you go to a chapel and if you miss it, that's it. You've had your chance. Get someone to give you some notes. The problem is that doesn't work today. If you ask me not to record something, I'm not going to record it. But we are in a world where every kid with a mobile phone is sharing how they're experiencing the world, and things are recorded because there's no reason not to. It's weird having to follow those rules of not recording, because it makes then people have to ask, well, what is it that you don't want us to see? Now, let me tell you, seeing that video yesterday and that broadcast over the weekend, there was nothing of any interest. We were, you know, chatting together as we were watching, and it was like watching a funeral. You know, we'd made so many funeral comments. You missed nothing, people. That said, we were able to sort of infer a lot. We did, you know, those clips are definitely worth checking out to see if, you know, how you interpret them. But now everybody wants to see this video, and there's no reason in the world why people should be able to see this video. Now, I have you know, maybe some different interpretations on things that were said. I don't. Did it really allude to the second anointing? Did it? We could have a ton of fun discussing that, but they've created that situation themselves. Suddenly now everyone is focused on this subject. And in the UK, people are hearing about the second anointing for the first time. So many people are going to be rattled by that. That's a real shelf breaker for so many people. So I think the impact and the fallout of this is really worrying, but mostly I concern myself about the personal fallout, the impact it has on the how people are experiencing church. I think I hated seeing Nemo sounding so hurt yesterday. I hate the fact that, you know, my friend, I just would have loved you to have a spiritual experience over that weekend that you prepared for, and you didn't get to have that, and that sucks.
Well, thank you very much, Jane. Laura and Julian?
Yeah. I got mine kind of cross references with Alana and Jane a little bit, but it's a running thread of treatment of the membership, really. So my first thought was that I felt quite protective of you. I know you said at the start you're not a victim and you went in with your eyes open, but I actually felt quite protective of the idea that you haven't done anything wrong, and you did it with the best of intentions to try and create a healthier environment for people that want to stay. And so the treatment, to be treated so abruptly and so in such a sterile, formal way, I thought was, I didn't like that at all. But the running theme of how I think the church treats its members. So we've now, like Peter had said, they've painted themselves into a corner now because they are essentially infallible, even though we say that they're not perfect. I had it's a bit like when they went on to talk about missionary work a little bit later. It's a bit like, you know, your internet provider that looks after its new members, the new people that are coming in get the best packages, but the people that have been with them for like donkey's years get this, you know, rubbish version. And I think we want more members, but we're not looking after the ones that we have. And I had a little backwards and forwards with somebody on Facebook after it was taken down, and it was a member that said that she'd felt the Spirit, and she mostly she was talking about Jesus and saying how, you know, she was sorry that people have had bad experiences, but, you know, just concentrate on Jesus. And so I had a bit of a backwards and forwards where I was talking to her about how can you accept that some people are actually getting harmed in the church? And her line was, you know, people are not perfect. Does that, and so I was asking, does that extend to the prophets and apostles? And she just couldn't commit. And for me, that's not her fault. She's doing her best to be a loyal member. She is concentrating her efforts on Jesus rather than the corporation. But the church have given her absolutely no tools to be able to fight her corner and to be able to protect what she loves. And that's not fair. That's not looking after the membership in any way. And just my last thought, which is, I suppose, a little bit out there, but Lana said that she feels that the church probably was restored and that it's lost its way. I can't tell you how many members now that I speak to that are feeling more and more like that they do want to hold on to an idea of a restoration. They are moving into other circles because the meat is in those other circles, in these other restoration movements. And, you know, it's not just one, there's several of them. And they are in the UK. And if the church is not going to look after its members, they will move into these other areas. And that's a real shame.
Just commenting on what's happened here, so not so much the conference itself. Peter, you said about not being able to take down Nemo's other videos, which obviously they can't, but there are things that they could do, you know. So you've got lots of content on there, lots of content that of course is far more critical of the church than actually just posting their own voices, and they can't take legal action for you to take it down, but they could approach you, they could reach out to you. I mean, that would be the best that we could hope for, isn't it? That they would actually reach out to you as a member of their flock and say, you know, Nemo, I'm sorry that you feel this way. Can we have a conversation about it? Can we discuss it? I know that you have tried to voice your opinions on this, and you've met the glass ceiling. There are things they could do. Hopefully this isn't on the cards, but they could go through the kind of church disciplinary procedure. So there are things that they could do, but they haven't. And I think that's really telling. And I think what it tells us is the biggest problem is them. The most damaging thing to the church is them. And that's what we've been saying now, that we don't, Britain needs rescuing from them. They are the problem. We don't need it. The British Isles doesn't need them. We're functioning perfectly without their input. In fact, that's my main take home, is that they are the biggest problem.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. The way they've handled this has made things worse. PD, your final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just to restate, there is no victim here. This is a game that we've all entered into, albeit a very serious one at this point. We all know that the church will see things that ecclesiastical leaders see, things that admin people will have things reported to them. I think the reason that we're here tonight was the speed at which they acted and the fact that they bypassed a lot of smaller steps first that they could have taken, and they went for the full-on burning of the bloody printing press. And I just want to say, we are not a printing press, okay? They're not going to throw us out in the street and stamp on us. You know, these videos will be out there, okay? I'm putting together a super reel that will show everything from when we first broke the news to when we finish tonight, okay? It should be out tomorrow. It will be transformative, so the church can't really do anything about it.
Can't touch it.
We'll use bits and pieces, but you will get the message. There are other ways that we can do this. It's not backing down, okay? It's not rolling over and letting them do it. It is realizing that, yeah, they've got a shit ton of money okay, and they can send lawyers, and they could tie us up for months and years, and they could be wrong, but by the time it gets to a judge, we'll all be bankrupt, and they won't. Okay, so it's all about finding different ways to allow people to see this content. And the annoying thing about this one, it wasn't even like an anti-Mormon video, you know. For chuff's sake, it was just their words for their people, right? Like, mind becking blown.
Thank you. I think on that note, I'm going to wrap it up and just say, look, Strengthening Church Members Committee, if you're watching this and you're the ones that actioned this, you made a mistake. You messed up, because in doing this, you've created the Streisand effect. All you've done is make people want to watch this. I am not the only person who recorded this. This will not disappear, and people's interest in it has only been piqued by the fact that you sent lawyers when you could have just spoken to me like a member. You treated me like a hostile stranger, and I feel like it's blown up in your face. So, sorry to break that news to you, but this didn't work. Thank you everyone for joining in. You all know where to find these people by now, but if you don't, I'm going to make sure I pop the links to their channels in the description of this video. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you very much for this joining in with this impromptu chat, and take care. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.